Seemed like Tushan cannot escape his fate and has to become the Tushan clan leader. But what will it mean for Xiaoyao and for their relationship? Nobody knows that for sure. Meanwhile, Xuan is preparing to present the renovated palace to the nobles of the Central Plains, not knowing that his enemies are taking action. And Xiang Liu is trying to console Xiaoyao, but somehow ends up hurting her instead. But does he simply hurt her because he's a bad person, or is there more to it according to the novel? Let's see! Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dirain, and today we continue diving into the drama and novel Lost You Forever, comparing the two versions of the story. This time we will focus on the episode 34. If you missed the previous parts, I highly recommend checking them out before you continue this video. And if you don't want to miss my next videos, subscribe! We begin with the novel. At the start of the chapter, we see a more detailed version of the last scene from the episode 33. Tushan arrives at Xinqiu and his grandmother is delighted and relieved to see him alive and well once again. Of course, she scolds him for disappearing for years again, but overall we can feel the warmth toward her grandson. There's even a sweet, classic grandma moment. She tells him he has lost weight and he assures her that he will eat more until she approves his looks. The cheerful and heartfelt reunion turns into a horrible scandal because Dean tries to cancel the engagement. The novel reveals in this scene that grandmother had to endure and brace herself all these years as her family members died one after another. Her husband, her only son, and his wife. Now she insists that Dean is to become the clan leader before she dies. The drama shows us the conflict at the end of the episode 33, and Dean also talks about grandma's reasoning and her having to endure the hardships for the clan's sake in the episode 34. But the thing is, in the novel there is a different dynamic to it. In the drama we see maids tidy in the Tushan manner, Dean enters the gates, and then we immediately jump straight into the conflict, skipping the joyful reunion. What we also don't see is grandmother's relationship with Tushan Ho. In the drama, the grandmother is usually quite cold toward Ho, but from the novel we learn that their father entrusted her with taking care of Ho, and she poured her heart and soul into him as much as she did into Dean. She also admitted, as they talked about the future clan leader, that Ho is in no way less capable than Dean. It's just that the other clans wouldn't accept Ho because they know the truth of his birth. Interestingly, this part about the other clans not accepting him doesn't really exist in the drama's final version, but it was most likely shot. In one of the later scenes, Ho sits near his mother's memorial tablet and tells her that he wasn't mad about Granny's words that the elders won't accept him. So the crew shot this scene, but probably cut it later to save time. Unfortunately, they did a poor job and left this phrase in the drama, which now makes zero sense if you haven't read the novel. Eventually we get a revelation. Grandmother is terminally ill and has half a year left in the drama and a year in the novel. The reason for her shortened lifespan also differs. In the drama, she simply overused her spiritual power to try to endure until the time was right. In the novel, it is much more complicated than that. Turns out she has been using voodoo bags, something similar to what Xiaoyao and Xiang Liu have, to extend her lifespan and keep her appearance. But this magic was dangerous and now it backlashed. At this moment, she also reveals that although she took care of Ho, she knows his ambition and was always aware that he was determined to take the leader's position from Dean as soon as he would get the chance. So she had no choice but to use prohibited magic and wait for Dean to awaken. There are other small changes and I want to briefly mention them. Ho in the drama argues that he is capable enough to be the clan leader. In the novel, it was only Tushan who tried to persuade grandmother. Ho stayed silent. Also, in the novel, grandmother makes Ho take a blood oath that he will never try to take the leader's place or harm Dean in any way. Understanding he has no choice, Jin visits Xiaoyao to explain himself and apologize. The scene from the drama is pretty close to the novel. As I have already mentioned, the things Jin says about his grandmother holding on were explained by the grandmother herself in the novel. Another detail I want to mention is that after Jin explains the situation, in the drama, Xiaoyao tells him directly that if he were to abandon everything coldly, he wouldn't be the Jin she likes. In the novel, these are her thoughts that she doesn't verbalize. Why is it important? Because the novel Xiaoyao really lived the way she said. She was mostly showing her colder and rational side, not letting the others guess her true feelings. Only occasionally was she somewhat relaxed. The drama needed another confession from her to emphasize their love once again, so that we don't forget, although he is not hers, she still loves him and only him. The drama has another added moment here. Xuan sitting on the porch and talking to the servants. We get that he was the first one to see Jin and thus he knows that something has happened. He admits that he should rejoice, but when he thinks about Xiaoyao, he cannot be fully happy. Ho is also unhappy about the current situation and tries to drown his sadness in wine. Ying finds him to tell him some good news that may turn the stakes to their favor. We still don't hear what exactly she told him, but we might have a guess because another big shock awaits Xiaoyao in the near future. Ho's wife, Lanmu, stands at the door and hears the conversation. So she knows about him and his lover now, or has known about them for some time already. And we don't know what she wants to do with that information yet. This whole sequence wasn't in the novel. There we read that both Jin and Ho went away after the scene with the grandmother. And Ho's wife noticed that Yin wasn't in the mansion, so she put two and two together and was now afraid, because she found out something she wasn't supposed to know. She probably knew how ruthless Ho was and wouldn't want to feel his wrath, so she didn't tell anyone. Another drama-added scene shows Xiaoyao near Chichen's hut that also became her and Jin's secret spot. This time, however, she is there alone, before Xuan comes with a letter from her father. The Grand Emperor allows Xiaoyao to attend Jin's ascension ceremony as a delegate from Haolin. This is important because only the clan leaders and the emperors or their representatives were invited. So Xiaoyao couldn't simply barge in and be there because she wanted to. It would have been inappropriate. An interesting detail from this added scene is that Xuan asks Xiaoyao if she thinks about Jin. She denies it and says that she enjoys the breeze and peace and quiet of Caoao Peak. But Xuan replies, "It is indeed too loud at the Zhijin Peak, where only the two of us live," pointing at the fact that she's lying. Jin and Ho from the novel have another meeting with the grandmother where she asks them if they have a decision for her. Jin agrees to become the clan leader and Ho agrees to never harm his brother or go for the leader's place. Although Jin himself couldn't really believe that Ho was willingly given up, Ho told him later that he'd do that for the grandmother. However, the relationship between the two brothers was beyond repair, and Jin understood that completely. The day of the ceremony comes, and there are only a couple of small differences between the drama and the novel that I'd like to mention. First of all, we don't read about Bei standing in the crowd and watching Xiaoyao. He shows up later. And on one hand, it is once again nice to see Xiang Liu being emotional and kind of watching over Xiaoyao, but on the other hand, he is beginning to give stalker vibes. Also, Jin didn't hesitate even for a second before accepting the Tushan clan seal. This was probably added to show his inner struggle and also to emphasize how he was willing to give everything up for Xiaoyao, which I find ridiculous at this point. He had so many opportunities to give up, and the only one he used was to literally die when he thought she was dead. As the ceremony was over, Xiaoyao in the novel started drinking and didn't really want to stay with the guests. She went to the mountainside to walk. It wasn't some long stairway as it was in the drama. As she walked, she suddenly heard footsteps behind her and she turned around to find Bei coming toward her. In the drama, he calls her name, which makes her hold her breath and look panicked. The novel also describes her emotions vividly. At first, she felt her heart soar and start beating faster. Then she actually wanted to run away from him, but stopped herself and forced herself to calm down and speak to him as if nothing bothered her. Well, considering the fact that he could literally feel her heart, I'm not sure if she could hide any of that. I like the way her emotional turmoil is portrayed in the drama as well. She holds her breath, her eyes widen, and it almost seems like she's about to run away. She even makes a small step forward. As he comes closer, she clenches the fabric of her sleeve and tries to calm down. But when he's finally there next to her, she is able to smile and casually start talking to him. And Bei, in the drama, is also conflicted and trying to regain his composure after seeing her so close again after all this time. As he approaches her, he seems unsure and almost afraid of her reaction. As she's still trying to give herself a casual facial expression, he's looking at her, watching her reaction and trying to figure out what it means. His face shows longing, worry, and we see that he has missed her a lot. But as soon as she turns to him, he looks down to try and also look casual. They both lie to each other without even saying a word. They lie with their faces, gestures, and bodies, afraid to let another person know more and look deeper. Although, as I said, he can't feel her heart, so we can argue whether he sensed her unease and struggle. Their conversation here is accurate to the novel with only one small exception. In the end, they ride Bei's winged horse away. And so, Xiaoyao and Bei visit a gambling den in Tintiao. They drank strong alcohol, and then Xiaoyao gambled for some time while Bei went somewhere. When he came back, he offered her to watch a slave fight. She couldn't understand why men always wanted to watch something like that, but Bei promised she wouldn't regret it. The drama doesn't show Xiaoyao gamble. We get straight to the fight as we did last time. Xiaoyao, of course, immediately recognizes the slave and is shocked to know that he was winning for 40 years consecutively to get his freedom back. This night was his last fight. Xiaoyao asks how did he manage to endure these 40 years, and we have a small difference in the way Bei answers her. Let's compare. In the novel, he says, "Endless enduring and patience, for a sliver of hope he never gave up on." Actually, it was the same thing you did when you were trapped in the cage by the nine-tailed fox. Xiaoyao says nothing to it. She gulps down her wine and places her previously won money on this familiar slave winning. In the drama, Bei places the last phrase about the nine-tailed fox in the beginning, and then he says, "It's nothing but following your heart with endless patience and endless waiting, as well as never giving up for a sliver of hope." Xiaoyao turns her face and looks at him, asking, "What are you talking about?" In his usual manner, he answers this question with another question. "What do you think I'm talking about?" It may be subtle, but the vibes are different in these two versions. The novel's version feels more casual, whereas the drama hints at Bei not only referring to Xiaoyao's years of captivity, but to so many other occasions. For example, it could refer to him waiting for her to realize her feelings for him. Considering her earlier reaction to meeting him and my assumption that he felt all her emotions, I find it very plausible. It can also be a reference to him rushing to save her and doing all he could to the point of sacrificing his life to bring her back. And it is also very plausible because after she heard his voice earlier, she remembered Xuan's words about him exchanging her life for a peak at Chenrong Mountain. So maybe he's trying to tell her that he really hoped for her return and endured these years for just a sliver of hope, not for a goddamn mountain peak. Or it is everything at once. I honestly wouldn't be surprised, because Xiang Liu is a very complex character, and his relationship with Xiaoyao is as complex. The fight itself played out the same way in both versions, up to the point when the slave gets up. In the drama, we see Bei remembering his own past in the slave arena when he sees the slave slowly getting back up on his feet. This wasn't in the novel, but I find it a very good addition because it shows that Xiang Liu used to be just like this beaten and miserable slave. We're shown in the drama how Jin was hurt and nobody cared about him after Ho tortured him and made him look unrecognizable. But still, Jin had spent decades being the beloved heir of the powerful clan, surrounded by the same kind of golden heirs and heiresses. It doesn't make his suffering less impactful, on the contrary, but he has at least seen parental love and peaceful life. Moreover, he himself knew that his family was looking for him. You may try to convince me otherwise, but I will die on that hill. He knew his own grandmother. And also he knew his mates. At least Jin Ye was very dedicated to him. So for him it was always clear that he had a way back into his family. He was just scared of Ho and also afraid to take a stand, which is also very understandable considering the things he endured. So it was his own decision to not try to go back. As for Xiang Liu, he started his life a miserable misfit, and he fought his way out of it and made himself the man he is today. Not without flaws, not someone totally upright, and absolutely not someone gentle and sophisticated as these first-class royals and clan leaders. But after all, he still has kindness in him, and he is on par with those who used to watch him fight to death and kill for their own amusement. After the slave got up and it was clear that he has won, Xiaoyao hugged Bei. In the drama, it is a very touching and romantic scene. Xiaoyao suddenly turns around and literally jumps to him to hug him, and he is shocked and stares at her almost in disbelief. We have a typical romantic scene direction and editing. Multiple angles, a little bit of slow motion, them looking into each other's eyes, etc. Then Xiaoyao looks at the slave and turns back to Bei with a bright smile, and he smiles back at her, as brightly and warmly. In the novel, this moment was much calmer. We read that Xiaoyao hugged Bei, and he didn't stare at her. He looked at the slave and smiled, saying, yes, he won. They also don't immediately leave the arena, as they do in the drama. In the novel, they stay there until they are the only ones left. And then Xiaoyao asks Bei why did he bring her to watch this match. He replies, to find amusement, what else could it be for? This part was left out in the drama. Of course, we can speculate about the reason he brought her there this night. Maybe it was a way to show Xiaoyao what he himself had to endure to escape the arena when he was young. Maybe it was a way of bonding for them. After all, they were there to see one match with a slave and witnessed the start of his 40 years long journey to freedom. It makes sense for them to also witness the end of this journey and to be able to share the joy after his triumph. I don't believe it was a pure coincidence because of the next scene, so let's find out what that scene is and how it is presented to us in two versions of the story. As Xiaoyao and Bei left the Gamblin Den, they heard someone calling for them. It was that slave who earned his freedom. In both versions, he tells Xiaoyao that he remembers her, and when she asks if he remembers Bei, he also says he does. Moreover, he adds that Bei has watched him fight a total of 7 times. And that's why I don't think it was a coincidence. Bei has kept an eye on the slave during the years that Xiaoyao didn't see him, and he couldn't have not known that his final fight was on this day. So he probably really wanted to bring Xiaoyao here. Bei doesn't need the slave to follow him, as he says, and it may seem a harsh answer, but we all know that he is in the middle of war, so he probably doesn't want another soul to be trapped in the conflict as he himself is now. Xiaoyao gives the slave a name, Zuo Er, which means left ear, and also the money she won betting on him. When Zuo Er says he wants to see the ocean, the novel Xiaoyao says that it is vast and very beautiful, but the drama one doesn't. It's one of those teeny tiny moments that don't matter to the most of the people, but I still find it important. After all, Xiaoyao now knows the vast ocean better than probably anyone around her. As Xiaoyao watches Zuo Er limp away, in the novel she thinks about Xiang Liu. I'll quote the novel here. Xiaoyao watched his departing figure and suddenly thought about 500 or 600 years ago when Xiang Liu escaped the slave deathmatch arena. He ought to have been a young man just like him, but already so world-weary and beaten down, so broken and battered. But like a newborn baby, whatever and whomever he encountered would direct the course of his life going forward. But she wasn't even born yet back then. So in the novel, Xiaoyao herself understands the meaning Xiang Liu's early years have for his development. In the drama, she watches the slave go and is also deep in her thoughts, but we as the audience can only guess what she's thinking about. Of course, from the next sequence of events, it becomes clear that she was probably thinking about Xiang Liu and his past. But I really think that in this case, most of the viewers had to hear her thoughts spoken out loud, because of the many misconceptions that surround Xiang Liu and Xiaoyao that could have been cleared with a couple of scenes like this one. This next scene is almost identical in both versions in terms of dialogue, but rather different in terms of actions. First of all, Bei snaps his fingers to get Xiaoyao out of the daze in the drama, which he doesn't do in the novel. As Xiaoyao starts talking about saving Bei, in the novel they are walking. In the drama, Bei starts walking, but Xiaoyao stands still, and after her first words are heard, he also stops and they both stay in one place, which gives the scene more impact in my opinion, and also more emotional weight, and helps the viewers concentrate on their expressions rather than be distracted by them moving. Xiaoyao's first words are the same in the novel and the drama, but after she tells him she would let him only be Fan Feng Bei, there is a small difference. In the drama she says he wouldn't have responsibility, duty, wouldn't owe anyone a favor or gratitude, etc. In the novel it goes like this: I really hate that I wasn't born a few hundred years earlier. I would definitely find you in the slave deathmatch arena. You see, these are very different words. The drama Xiaoyao just emphasizes the reasons Xiang Liu isn't really as carefree as Fan Feng Bei. Of course, it shows that she wants him to be able to decide his own fate and to live the life he wants without needing to repay someone for saving him, and in a way it is sweet. But on the other hand, Xiang Liu decided for himself that he wants to help Hongjian. Nobody forced him or threatened him, as if anyone in this world would even be able to do that. So, if we look at the drama's version, Xiaoyao is showing ignorance here, telling Xiang Liu that his decision to be a part of the rebellion is based on these circumstances, and not completely on his own will. And in the novel, though her words may be a bit childish, they show pure care and raw emotion of this moment. She is unfiltered and clearly states that she wants to be the person who saved him. And she knows she would have found him, showing and also confirming a kind of connection between them. She feels so connected to him that she believes their fates would be intertwined in every scenario. Who also usually talks like that? All these "we're meant for each other in every life," "I love you in every universe." You write in the comments what you think, and we are moving on. In both versions they stare at each other in the eyes and Bei reach out his hand to touch Xiaoyao's cheek. What I like in the drama is that this scene is a real slow burn, and we get to see emotions flowing through both of the characters as they say much more with their eyes than they have ever actually spoken out loud. We see this tiny tender smile on Bei's face, and then it almost seems like he's about to say something, as his hand almost touches her face. Xiaoyao looks at his hand approaching her and makes a subtle move, leaning closer to his hand, as if trying to meet it halfway. It wasn't described in the novel, we only read that their eyes meet and they wanted to say more but didn't. Also, in the novel his hand touched her cheek and then he took it back away. In the drama, if there was a touch, it was so light that I don't think it counts. And now I will rant. In the drama, Bei looks at Xiaoyao the whole time he reaches out his hand. Then he turns away from her and looks in the other direction. After some time he smirks and tells her she's not worthy of saving him. Visibly hurt, Xiaoyao still continues talking and mentions Hongjian, which seems to infuriate Bei. His eyes turn red, he screams "shut up" and starts walking towards Xiaoyao, emitting danger with his demeanor and look. And suddenly, there is our shining knight without a horse, ready to save the day and his damsel in distress. Bei seems surprised to see him there and starts talking about Ye Ying. But as Jin starts explaining himself, Xiaoyao grabs his arm and they quickly leave. Bei is once again left alone. He looks in the direction they went and tears fill his eyes. These tears never fall, trapped by his stubborn determination. He slowly walks away for almost 2 minutes somehow, and then we fade to black. So, what happens in the novel is, after slightly touching Xiaoyao's cheek, Bei glanced behind Xiaoyao and smirked. "Based on you right now, you want to save me. Are you worthy?" It means she is not strong enough right now to do that. Clearly something different from the drama. Then she mentions Hongjian, but doesn't say anything about Bei deserving better. She says, "I just think, I just feel," and he tells her to shut up. There is nothing about his eyes turning red. There is nothing about walking towards her. It is simply written that he looked like he was wrapped in a deadly aura. And I'm more than sure that Tan Jianse is capable of showing the deadly aura with just one glance. So the drama didn't have to change that. Xiaoyao slowly backed away from him and felt a familiar embrace. Jin was there, but he didn't stand in front of her, as he did in the drama. He stared at Bei with a look full of warning. And then they ran away in the same manner as in the drama. Do you see the difference? I'll give you time to process it and write your observations in the comments. Go on, pause the video and tell me, what exactly did the drama change this time? What does it make us feel and think about the characters, and why do you think it had to be changed? Anyway, I'll of course tell you my opinion and thoughts on this sequence. The drama once again took the choice from Bei. The novel Bei glances behind Xiaoyao, where Jin was probably listening in this whole time and burning with jealousy. Bei saw Jin and decided on one hand not to show his own weakness to Jin, and on the other hand to push Xiaoyao toward Jin by being a jerk. And this is the thing he will do even more in the later chapters and episodes. The drama Bei doesn't show any signs that he has noticed Jin. And this fact makes his crash out on Xiaoyao look like one more toxic relationship red flag. Yes, hurting her to push her away is also not good. But if he makes it to bring her closer to the man she thinks she loves with all her heart, it becomes a little bit more complicated. So why did the drama change this part? Well, what we got in the drama is one more reason for people to hate Xiang Liu, and one more heroic Jin moment. Exactly what the drama needs to sell us the endgame couple. Won't you agree? Then let's talk about what happens with Xiaoyao and Jin after they get away from Bei. As they walk, Xiaoyao lets go of Jin's hand in the drama and simply stops walking in the novel. But it's not an important change. What's important is Jin from the drama asks if she's going to leave him. Jin in the novel says, "Don't leave me." I think the difference is clear, but I'll say it anyway. The novel Jin is a classic codependent partner who is clingy and will do everything to make you stay with him, to the extent of hurting themselves or threatening to hurt or unalive themselves if you leave. This is the vibe I get. I'm sorry if you love this character, but I've been there and seen that in real life. Xiaoyao replies that she's not going to leave him, and Jin asks if she's telling the truth. In the novel, he also thinks to himself that he doesn't really believe it, because Xiaoyao is cold, and even if she likes you, the moment these feelings start hurting her, she will let go. In the drama, not only doesn't he think like that, there is also another change. Xiaoyao says she saw Jin become the clan leader and thought they were on a crossroad, taking different paths, but she doesn't think like that anymore. In the novel, she simply said she was a bit down but isn't anymore. And then, in the drama, Xiaoyao says, "Even Zuo Er endured 40 years for just a sliver of hope. How can we give up? Even if the roads are different, our lives are still made by us. How can different roads decide our lives?" Let me explain why this never fails to piss me off. First of all, how should Jin know who Zuo Er even is and know his story with 40 years of endurance? The only logical explanation is he stalked the hell out of Xiaoyao and Bei this whole evening. Do you have any other ideas? Never has the drama and even the novel ever mentioned that Xiaoyao told Jin about that one fight in the slave arena, the first one of Zuo Er. And even if she did, he didn't have a name back then. And Xiaoyao herself found out about this 40 years deal just this evening, like half an hour ago or so. And they have also spoken about the 40 years of fighting only inside the gambling den. So Jin must have been inside to know, or Xiaoyao just infodumped on him without thinking he'd understand. And also using the event that she lived through with Bei to describe something related to Jin right after that intimate moment between her and Bei happened, this is beyond 180 degrees turn. It just screams, we're so desperate to make it all about Jin. We have to make scenes out of thin air and thick dedication. And another thing is that Zuo Er plays a bigger role in the novel. Just like Abi and Liang, he is an important witness in the story of Xiang Liu and Xiaoyao. And this episode is the last time we will ever hear from him in the drama. So to use him in this context, knowing what he sees and says in the novel, oh Tonghua, you really know how to hurt your readers exactly where it will sting the most. Did you think I'm done venting my anger? No, because the next thing Xiaoyao says is that she is cold-hearted, and it must be hard for Jin to deal with her self-preservation instinct. And Jin assures her he's willing to trust her and make the effort first. And this right in front of my salad. I mean, right after the drama made Bei hurt Xiaoyao for no reason. Another contrast moment from the drama to ensure we all know how noble and kind Jin is and how much he has to quote-unquote endure. He is engaged, and he failed to cancel the engagement for how many decades? I mean, of course, he was on a brink of death for almost 40 years. But think of all the times he could have done it before. And still he didn't. Who had to endure, I'd like to ask? Had he cancelled the engagement, they could have been already happily married and having little clingy foxes running around. But no! Next up in the drama, the uncles discuss Xuan's alliance with Zhu Shanjin and Fan Long and also assume that the Xilin family will support him. Fifth uncle plans to use Central Plains against Xuan. In the novel, this scene happens at the end of the chapter and is much more complex. Uncles gather with their other allies and decide between three options. First is to kill Xuan, second is to do nothing, and the third is to make him seem rebellious because of the connection to the Central Plains. Most of them eventually agree that the third option is the best one. Also, Ho in the novel stops opposing Jin and cuts ties with the uncles at this point. The drama also shows more troubles for Xuan. The clans gave him a tight deadline to finish the renovations and start the blessing ceremony. He suspects that it's not that simple, but still he cannot complain and agrees to the deadline. At the end of the episode, Jin and Fanlong fight and make up. They have a banquet and get a visit from Zhanxun. And that's it for today. From now on, there will be more videos dedicated to a single drama episode because there's just so much to discuss each time. In the next episode, we will talk about the drama messing up with the timeline again, about the pure coincidences, and about Xiang Liu's blood in Xiaoyao's veins. Interested? Leave a comment under this video to let me know you're waiting and also to let me know your opinions on the changes I've discussed in this one. All the comments and subscriptions really motivate me to produce these videos faster, and they also help more people discover my channel. Anyway, I wish you to stay healthy, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and find happiness in every moment of your lives. See ya!